look, at the end of the day, everybody's got to protect their own situation. That's what we do, right? We try to improve our situation. And right now, people with regional banks will probably be okay, because just imagine if 200 of them failed. The government's not going to let that happen, right? So it's like, the worst thing usually never happens, and the best time doesn't last forever. The worst times don't last forever. I don't picture 200 banks failing, because that would be implosion in our economy that we couldn't handle, and the government would step in. But does that mean that one or two couldn't fail, that the government doesn't step in? And what
on the depositor side, though?
On the depositor side, and so what does that mean? You go give money to a bank, and then you want to run your business with it, and the bank goes out of business, takes all your money. I don't see the government letting that happen. They didn't let it happen with SVB.
So then why did you start off with that? I move everything. Why was the
because I don't want that 1 or 2 week period of I can't get access to the money.
Okay. But you think the likelihood of this actually happening
low,
very low,
very low.
Okay. Peter,
I'll go on record and say very low.
Peter, what about you?
I would agree.
Very low.
We are recording. Scott Galloway did call it that, Craig. You are right.
Say Joey Begadona's podcast. By the way, I just want to clear the air how incredibly hurt I was that the two of you launched the podcast without me.
I knew
you guys were on.
This
is like, that you knew this was gonna be first, because Randy, I don't know if you know this, but I consider you one of my best friends outside of my consigliere. And when you said, "Hey, I got a break, I got a podcast with Peter," I thought you were fucking with me. I'm on a boat, and I'm like, "Well played, sir." And you're like, "No, seriously."
I like your description of me. I describe you as my dentist.
No, fuck, whatever. That's not true. But anyway, I was so hurt, but it's my L of 1, and you and Peter don't have L's of 1. And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, we're talking about the culture index. What's your L, Randy?
I think my L is 10.
Yeah, you have absolutely no heart. You're cold. You need me in your life.
It has made me so insecure since I learned that too. I'm being gentler. I'm helping old ladies across the street and stuff. I'm like, whoa. I question all my decisions.
If you saw my phone, the cascade of events of Craig's butthurtness going through, and me kind of being a little bit more robotic like you and not empathizing with him made it
I was
worse.
So upset. I thought you guys were messing with me, because I've talked to Randy for years. I'm like, I can't wait to have you on the podcast. You're like literally one of my closest friends. And when you said you're having without me, that was a perfect way to razz me. And then it was true.
Okay.
So it was like, no, I'm actually taking your wife to dinner right now. Oh, okay, ha ha ha. And then later you show me a picture of me. And you,
so this is the sympathy pod for Craig. Randy,
there's going to be great content.
All those years you were between Peter and I, and now we've removed the middleman.
You did it to with my buddy Michael.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's get to real facts here. So I hope everybody enjoyed the last podcast with Peter and Randy. But what I'm excited about is to have you here. To go over a bunch more topics, but also for people to get to see the real you. Because I listened to that, I'm like, a little bit more flatline Randy. That's not the Randy I'm used to. That's not the Randy that drove his scooter into the hair salon for the first day I met you. When you drove your Vespa into the building.
You were getting your hair cut, and I didn't want to leave it outside, and I didn't have a lock. And so I drove into the salon.
He literally brought a working, not a California Vespa that's electric, a gas.
No, an actual,
Vespa.
A 150, a big one.
That's crazy.
Big one.
But I'm excited for the audience to get
Anyway, I want you to know that Peter and I had a great time.
I know.
And I did watch the podcast, and I thought Peter and I did really well.
I thought we did fantastic.
I'm going to go see a patient. I'm going to go right back. Okay, well, there's a lot going on here, Peter. So
tell me, the fact that you guys are both in person, that sounds you're side by side. I need you to get together a little bit closer.
Okay, for those that are on video, you can see it, and we're very close together. But there's a lot going on. I've been blowing Randy up. Like yesterday, I texted him like, "Hey, what do I do? I've got money over different bank accounts, regional banks, and blah blah blah." So I know that as of today, Monday, at 2:00, the regional bank stocks are actually rallying, and I think it's been eased some of the concerns. But I like to jump right into that, because if you have $1 more than the FDIC of $250,000 of insurance, is that money in a precarious spot? Is it for those that have regional banking deposits or business banks and stuff like that? Are we looking down the face of a problem with regional banks?
So what I would say is I did get your text yesterday and this morning, and I know you were concerned. And so was I. And everybody accused me of panicking when I moved my money, but I moved my money the day after SVB collapsed. And the reason I did is because runs on the bank are real. They're rational because only smart people would quickly get their money out of a bank that they may not be able to get it out of next week. So are you causing the panic? Are you part of the problem, or are you solving your own problem? And most of us want to solve our own problem.
I think it's both, by the way. I think you're causing the problem. You know, if the FDIC insures you to 250,000 and you have 2.5 million and you open up 10 different bank accounts, the FDIC still has to insure the 2.5 million.
I understand, which is why they went in and backstopped, which I supported that idea. But you know how this is.
Well, you supported, you called Powell. You said, hey,
no.
Hey, Jamie, it's me.
No, I by the way, when Janet Yellen makes a presentation, she's so bad on camera.
Oh, yeah.
It's almost unbelievable. I feel like I'm watching my grandmother try to run our economic policy. And she must be really smart to have that job. But I haven't seen it in the last couple of interviews.
Well, the good news is that I think we can all agree on both sides of the aisle that Biden is a very good speaker, and we're all feeling very confident in his diplomacy and his articulation.
Let's go.
Regardless of where you are politically, I think that's a safe thing to say.
Let's go back to the banks for a second. Okay, so right now, and Peter, jump in here because you're a small businessman. I'm a small businessman. We all are, and probably most of your listeners. But right now, around this country, entrepreneurs are getting taken to lunch by their regional banker, and they're sitting down and they're looking at their client, the banker, and he's saying, everything's going to be fine. Here's our situation.
Right.
And the entrepreneur is going, don't worry, I'm sticking with you. You've always stuck with me. And then over the next 90 days, the entrepreneur is pulling that money out of the bank account and moving to one of the big four.
Are you kidding me? You're really saying that right now?
I'm telling you, it's going on all over America.
Do you realize
almost everybody I've talked to is moving their money?
I know, but do you realize the responsibility of this microphone and the distributor and the influence we have? You are literally going to cause. Peter, what say you on this, bud? We got to put a pin in that right now because I'm worried about.
I will concur with that. I have a lot of friends who are doing very similar. They are moving to the systemically important banks, which is in my opinion part of the plan, right? This is all a shift towards the central bank digital currency, right? And want to be able to track that. So in order to track everything implicitly, the easiest thing to do is to put it to one of the big four banks. And Janet Yellen has made it very clear in a congressional, deposition that they will not be extending the same courtesy they did to regional banks that they did for SVB.
When did that? You guys heard that?
No. What she's been asked on many. I'm glad you brought that up, Peter, because I was going to mention that as well. Is she has not assured everybody that everybody's okay, because that's like writing an $11 trillion check for the government.
Right.
So, but what she says is everything's fine, stay the course. Steady, easy, but she has not said you're all insured. Now, as depositors in regional banks, we assume that we'll be insured, right? Because imagine the lawsuits if we weren't. If my bank fails and they bailed out, they backstopped SVB. We got to use the word backstop, not bailout,
right?
Because the owners, shareholders, and bondholders are going to be wiped out. But right now, 70% of all commercial real estate debt is regional banks.
Yeah.
Right. So we need regional banks. We can't all be with the big four. That's way too much control for the big four and for the government that insures them.
100%. And
so if we need regional banks, they just have to come out with some sort of legislation and policy that makes us all comfortable.
Yeah. Like 4 days ago.
Yeah. And oh, by the way, for probably not a lot of money, you could write a code that would manage all those bank accounts that you're talking about.
Right.
So when everybody says, oh, it'd be impossible to have 10 bank accounts with 250,000 each.
No, there are applications that do that.
No, it wouldn't. You could do that very easily, and you could probably write checks off of all of them systemically, whatever. But we shouldn't.
That's just insane, though. Like, that doesn't solve the problem of anything. Meaning that the FDIC has only insured the amounts of the 22 trillion that's at exposure. They've only got about 200 billion in treasury. So it solves nothing to move to open up 10 bank accounts.
Right. It's so dumb. It's like
It's
almost,
just
it reminds me of the
academic at that point.
pandemic
It's
rules
so
of like
dumb.
wear your mask when you walk in a restaurant, and the minute you sit down, take it off. It like there's no logic behind any of this. It's just a way to give people a process so that they feel comfortable. I think people in the face of uncertainty need a process. Like stand on one leg and rub your head with your left hand, you'll be fine. But coming back to the idea about moving your money around, I was speaking with a friend of mine who is a lot smarter than me, and he said, I told him like, well, I'm not really worried about it because my regional bank, I have blank dollars in deposits, but I owe them like 6 times the amount of money that I have in deposits. He's like, yeah, that doesn't help.
That's not the same.
Well, what do you mean? He's like, well, in the bylaws, in the arrangement of your instrument of your loan, if they lose all your money, it is not deducted from your balance. So that was disturbing, but I think we have a responsibility to our listeners, like really, and I'll come to Peter in a second because I know Peter's answer, because Peter's fastening the tinfoil hat as we speak. What is your real thought, Randy, that you really believe that the regional banks, the depositors, are not going to be secure? What's your real thought? Like, be honest here.
So no bank can survive a run. You understand that, right?
Right. I understand.
So if everybody calls tomorrow and says, I want my money back, the bank collapses.
All of them.
Right?
Yeah.
So is that a house of cards? That's a house of cards, right?
Yes. Because
when we put our money in, we don't tell the bank, you can hold this and do whatever you do with it to give me a little bit of yield or no yield. And I want to be able to get it back in a moment's notice. We are allowed to get it back in a moment's notice. But if everybody wants it back in a moment's notice, the bank implodes. So just think about that for a second.
Right.
So no matter what they say, no matter what Janet Yellen says, you are taking the risk. And let's talk about a sleepless night, right? If I had money in First Republic, right? Almost 7 figures in First Republic.
Okay.
Right? In a checking account. And I was earning, or a money market account, I was earning maybe 3.5%, something like that.
Okay.
And I moved it out of First Republic simply because I thought everybody was going to pull their money out of First Republic because they were the #1 on the news after SVB. And so I just didn't want to be the last guy holding the bag. Okay. Now, if the government backstopped it, they might have made it good, a week later or 2 days later or 5 days later. I didn't want those nights of sleep or lack of sleep, right? Yeah. I'm just saying, hey, I'm going to move my money. And the problem is, if I'm doing that, so is everybody else. So this is why I hope the lawmakers right now, there's 2 things. One, they got the debt ceiling vote coming up, right? So they need to be working on that, but they really need to be working on this banking legislation.
Like yesterday.
Right.
And if it comes out tomorrow, it's too late. I mean, it's just crazy. It's not coming out already.
Yeah. And also the stock market, I've never seen more what they call choppiness. I call it whiplash in the stock market over the last 3 months. I mean, we've been up to 4,200, down to 3,800, up to 4,200, down to 3,800 in the S&P. The bank stocks are up. The bank stocks are down.
Like why are they up today? Why
today they're up because, well, just, all the articles that get written after the news, right? So they basically tell you what happened. They can't really forecast correctly. So one thing that's amazing about the Wall Street Journal is if you have a good day in the market, the next day they tell you why. And then the next day you have a bad day in the market, and then the next day they tell you why. But they can never tell you in the day in advance. We'd all be better investors. So it's crazy. We need legislation. I don't know how to write it.
Peter? Well, I mean, they're going to have to quadruple the amount of the FDIC insurance, or else there's 200 banks on the brink of the same fate as SVB.
Mm-hmm. And I think,
Sorry, Peter, you said 250. Is that what it was?
200. There's about 200 on that have exposure very similarly to First Republic, SVB. And this doesn't even bring up, like, are you guys familiar with the choke point 2.0?
Is that a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu move? Because I think
no, but it is basically like a lot of these banks were very crypto friendly banks, right?
Oh, yeah. The fear that they're going to go in and use this to get banks to kick out crypto and try to wipe them out.
To eliminate exit ramps and on ramps and exit ramps from fiat to crypto and crypto back, right? Meaning the person who whoever was going to acquire this Silvergate, they actually had in the bylaws that they have to have nothing to do with, not bylaws, in the conditions of buying it over or taking over the assets, they have to eliminate all of the crypto assets. Like, this is actually in the FDIC bulletin. So the choke, if you can Google this, we won't get into it here, but if someone's interested, you can just Google kind of choke point 2.0 is what it's called. And so many think that this is just, this is them feeling vulnerable with Bitcoin specifically and crypto.
Wow, that's deep, but I I appreciate the sentiment. It just it takes into a lot of assumptions and
Well, look at, it's not me saying it, and I didn't do
no,
a very
no,
good
I know,
job
I know,
building
I know.
it,
Look at what
but
Balaji said. I saw that. I watched that.
yeah.
90
There,
days
there,
to
there was an article today, Peter, in the Journal that JP Morgan and US Bank are picking up a bunch of those crypto deposits, which is really unique because JPM, I think, is number 1 and US Bank is number 5, maybe. And so yesterday the news was the choke point, and then this morning those big banks
Interesting.
are taking up some of that business. So
so what do you make of that?
so all we did was kick the can down the road on that, because just pivot to TikTok for a second, right? If you read the bill on how they would ban TikTok, it's a piece of legislation that basically says that our federal government can use whatever means necessary to protect us from like digital threats.
Right.
So if they ban TikTok using that piece of legislation, what could they do with Bitcoin? Is Bitcoin a digital threat?
Didn't they didn't one of the presidents like seize all US gold owned by private companies? Wasn't that a thing, like Eisenhower or something like that? They literally made it illegal for US citizens to own gold bullion or something. I don't know. Jamie, fact check that for us.
Anyway,
We don't have Jamie. I just thought that was funny to
it
say
did
that.
sound cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
it
thought
was
it
the
was
Gold,
Jamie's.
Gold
I thought
Reserve
it was
Act
AC.
of 1934 that signified that American people could no longer hold gold.
Yeah. So like
yeah.
it's been done.
Yeah, so they
Yeah.
could use that TikTok legislation. And by the way, I'm not saying they shouldn't ban TikTok. I don't know enough about it. But I do know that TikTok has access to 75% of anybody under 30 years old, more than any other media in the United States.
The amount of intrusive, the depth of how intrusive that application is to seeing everything on your phone is like crazy. Joe Rogan talked about that. Like if you were to actually read the terms and conditions, you would never actually sign up for that.
Right.
That's
So
crazy.
so anyway, Peter, any thoughts?
Well, no, I think it's interesting. Look, I think with the takeaway, people listening to this, right? I always try to vicariously think, if I was on the receiving end of this information, like, okay, this is great. What is the action? Right. And it's not opening 10 accounts. It's not opening 10 business accounts. That cannot be the solution. Is it like you said, moving, if you feel like your money is vulnerable, moving to a systemically important bank, right? A Wells, a Chase.
But you don't have the service on those. Like, for
I
my regional,
agree. I'm a big fan of regional. I do both of mine. Well, one of my bankings.
Regional banks help build my business.
Yeah, me too. I mean, all my and for me, I need cash deposits that are like well in like almost 7-figure range. Like I need that level of float for my business. So like it's crazy. Like what's the actionable item short of moving out of that regional bank?
Bitcoin.
Oh, come on. I need you to get this app. I need you to open up a Coinbase account.
So Peter, I don't look. At the end of the day, everybody's got to protect their own situation. That's what we do, right? We try to improve our situation. And right now, people with regional banks will probably be okay, because just imagine if 200 of them failed. Right. The government's not going to let that happen, right? So it's like, the worst thing usually never happens, and the best time doesn't last forever. The worst times don't last forever. I don't picture 200 banks failing, because that would be implosion in our economy that we couldn't handle, and the government would step in. But does that mean that 1 or 2 couldn't fail, that the government doesn't step in? And what
on the depositor side, though?
On the depositor side, and so what does that mean? You go give money to a bank, and then you want to run your business with it, and the bank goes out of business, takes all your money. I don't see the government letting that happen. They didn't let it happen with SVB.
So then why did you start off with that? I move everything. Why was the
because I don't want that 1 or 2 week period of I can't get access to the money.
Okay. I think the likelihood of this actually happening
low,
very low,
very low.
Okay. Peter,
I'll go on record and say very low.
Peter, what about you? Like
I would
very,
agree.
very low.
I would agree. They will fix this, and the way they will fix this when it comes to an issue is they will just do what they do best, and that is turn on the money printer,
Yeah.
which
I
is
did
going
hear
to.
though that the amount of money it would take to insure all the deposits.
No. It's not the insurance. There's backstopping and the prevention of failing banks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Will cost
But it-
upwards of $1 to $2 trillion.
Sure. And
I
the
know, but
print
to
money,
insure that going in hindsight, to insure it would not have been that difficult to insure the FDIC to a higher limit.
The insurance is all bullshit, in my opinion, right? How do you have something where the Treasury fund that's designed to insure it is only about 1.5% of the amount that you're trying to insure? So if everything fails, your insurance, I know it's a warm fuzzy and feels good, that goes to shit too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Most insurance rates, if you think about it, are only 1% to 2% of the insured value. It's just that it doesn't work with money because if the bank fails, everything fails.
Look at what happens in Florida when we get a hurricane.
Yeah.
Like try to get
insurance
on your house.
But there's
now.
49 other states that Progressive insures that didn't have a hurricane.
Right.
So
this is like
that's how insurance works.
National
Correct.
hurricane.
If a bank wipes out, everybody loses.
It's a cascade. It's a cascade of the interconnected banking. Like it doesn't stop.
We couldn't issue payroll for 2 days in our practice because somehow our payroll company was tied to SVB. I don't know how, and we don't use some like Silicon Valley payroll company, but like the normal, like we're in the big 3 payroll companies. It had some form of contagion to SVB, just to show that example. It was like our checks were held for like a day.
Wow. How'd you like that?
It didn't. Well, I mean, as the business owner writing the check, it makes me feel like I'm like a failure because it's like, can you hold your check for a couple days? Hey, here's the check. Don't deposit it. It doesn't feel very good.
My first few years in business, I always had more payables than receivables, and we would actually print the checks and match up the invoices and set them on the corner of my controller's desk. And then as we got deposits in, we would figure out how many checks we could release. I mean, talk about living at red line. And but that only lasted 10 or 12 years.
Yeah, exactly.
True.
No, it's funny. It's like
true.
Brandy would always tell me, and this is a great analogy for us, is like every time like one of his builders would get upset and call him and be like screaming about the install or something like that, or you get one negative comment, he'd say it felt as though the toilet was flushing and I was watching my business completely circle and flush down the drain. It's like when we as dentists get a bad Google review, like, oh my God, this is going to be it. This is like the beginning of the end.
Yep.
And all your mind goes and draws the conclusions why this is step 1 of a 10-step process to you completely going insolvent.
Yeah.
And that stays with you till the very end until you sell your business. And then the funny thing about what you said about selling the business was you said you sold the business, you saw the money get wired in. It looked really good for a couple of days. Like, holy shit, it's really there. And then you felt, number 1, the obligation deploying that capital. I mean, look at the climate we're in right now. And number 2, you realize that you had the money all along. It was always there.
Yeah. It was
so
in the business.
I love that idea. So for those dentists out there that don't do net worth analysis, you'll get a good sense
Don't yet. They're all going to do net worth analysis. Everybody who listens to your podcast is going to have an up-to-date financial statement every month.
Right, but that's part of the summit. This is a teaser for the summit, right? Isn't that document you two are cooking together? But like for those that, because listen, as dentists, we're like kind of sheep herders. We had 4 sheep today. We have 5 sheep tomorrow, 6 sheep. And then whatever you can count, you feel good about. But what you really don't understand is you own the land that the sheep are on. And sometimes your sheep business is actually not that profitable, but the land is actually more profitable. And you also used to tell me that every time you look at what you made for the year, you also say, well, how much principal did you reduce? So count that. And the best money that you can earn is the passive income that is not in cash, but in paid off equity. It's moving money from right pocket to left. You can't spend it. It's illiquid, but it's actually part of your net worth. And that's how to get to real wealth. It's not chasing the dollars.
So question, Randy, would you rather have in this kind of like instability? Let's just say that our currency is in a little bit of instability right now. Would you rather have equity or cash?
Oh, such an easy one.
So, Peter, when you're building a business and building your net worth, you're going to concentrate your effort, right? Mm-hmm. And then when you liquefy your business or you multiply your net worth, 4x, 10x, wherever you are today, whatever your goal is, the way to protect it is to diversify, right? To have broad diversification instead of, narrow. And so I'm a guy who always holds about 7% cash, and I have friends that hold 20% cash. The guys that are holding 20% cash have lost a big chunk of it in the last 24 months with the rampant inflation we've had. I will tell you that I feel like most people, like right now is not the time where you'd kind of want to go out and buy a new car or go out and, the recessions happen because people stop spending money. And
what about a house?
Rich people stop spending money, and people without as much money stop spending money, because it just doesn't feel good if you feel like your net worth is getting worse, or if you feel like there's risk on the horizon. What's weird about the bad times, though, is the bad times don't last very long. Like high interest rates never last long. Look at all the history of high interest rates. They don't last long. They come in to solve a problem, and we solve the problem, and then the high interest rates go away. Peter brought up a point earlier, is how's the Fed going to solve this problem? They're going to turn on the printing press. What's that going to do? That's going to exacerbate inflation.
Right.
More money chasing goods and services. That's the only way inflation is created, is by printing money. If there was no printing money, there'd be no inflation.
Okay, so if we're going into a period of rising inflation, you said I wouldn't buy a car, but what about an appreciating asset? Would you buy the house right now?
Well, that's a complicated narrative right now because prices are coming down. So probably I would if it was a long-term purchase.
Okay.
Listen, I tweeted this morning.
I know. I was the one person that saw your tweet. Did you notice that?
I know, because I'm new on
just
Twitter.
Texted me.
I'm new on Twitter.
Yeah.
But I had a funny thought this morning. I was thinking this morning of every asset I've ever owned. And I'm a real estate guy. I've had office buildings, I've done condos, I've done construction, I've done some development.
You own a Giant Eagle in Ohio, one of your premier
I've
properties.
got a bunch of Walgreens and CVS's and all this stuff. And I've had a bunch of, stocks over the years. And one thing I can tell you is everything I've ever sold, I wish I owned today.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
And the funny thing, Peter, I haven't told you this yet, but that land I just sold like 3 months ago, I have all this cash from that. I'm like, I'd probably rather have the land right now.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no chance if you own land outright that it's going to get taken from you outside of like an invasive a force coming in to come and do your property. But having that level of money, cash right now, I'm not feeling so good about that.
Yeah, it's a weird feeling, but we do want to. You do want to have cash for rainy days, right?
Right.
And your business could have a rainy day. I mean, imagine this. What if one day something happened where the government said you can't run your dental practice for the next 3 months? I mean, I know that would never happen.
No, I know. It's crazy.
Right?
Like, what do you mean? Like shutting you down?
Shutting you down.
Oh my
Completely.
God, that's preposterous.
Yeah. So
it never happened.
Anyway, so yes, we need to have enough cash for that. Most people like to
seize your bank account or something like that. I feel like, let's say you drove a truck or something and you lived in Canada. I don't know.
Let's say you did a protest and they seized your bank account.
Right, like something ridiculous.
Anyway, so I'm a big fan of cash, but when you have cash, so where do you put it? Obviously, you want it to be insured, or at least not be taken away in one of the big four banks, let's say, for this case. And then you can buy T-bills and money markets and things like that, which are ready liquid market. You can make 4.6% is what I'm making on my T-bills right now. And
you just told me, on your call this morning or your text this morning with I found out that there's private money market accounts, through like Merrill and stuff like that are in the low mid fours.
Yeah,
I'm decent.
Yeah, I'm 4.6%, and they own interbank loans, they own T-bills, they own.
So it's a portfolio of assets.
Yeah, and it's immediately liquefiable, but that doesn't mean it can't go down in value. That doesn't mean you can't lose your return. I mean, when the tide goes out, all these asset prices go down, and so you really just need holding power to get through the bad times, because when the times are good, everybody's going to dinner and everybody's buying a new car.
What's funny is you think you're earning. Well, this is the irony of where I love people when they talk about like, well, I'm earning 4.5% of my cash. No, you just slowed your slippage down to 1.5.
Exactly.
Well, no, that's the official number, Peter. 6% inflation. We all know we don't have 6% inflation.
But like you're not yet. So it's just you just slowed the melting ice cube down.
Yeah.
Peter, in my investment group, there are a bunch of smart guys that are really excited about 4.5 only as a hedge against inflation. They know they're going backwards. By the same token, I have 2 mortgages on my 2 houses for 2.75% for 10 years interest only. So what are those mortgages really costing me, Peter? They're costing me -5, right?
Yeah.
Like they paid me to take the money because of inflation.
Yeah.
The house is appreciating, the mortgage is not.
Well, I mean, that's what inflation does. It, you know,
It pays down debt.
everybody's so excited about the handouts and the printing of the money through COVID, but really what it did is it helps the rich because inflation helps the rich. You know, the same inflation that kills you from spending helps your assets.
Yeah, and not only that, but inflation pays off the national debt because they print money today and then it depreciates by 2% a year, which is their target. So when they say target, they just want 50 years from now the debt to be zero if they didn't keep printing.
So
right?
I think one of the
the Fed's goal is never to have zero inflation. It's always to have 2%.
So back to dentistry for a second. You guys, Craig, you had brought up something about a house, right? So let's spin it to a practice and an expansion on this. And this is where I think that America is the greatest place in the land, in the world to have leverage and create arbitrage. For example, yes, the interest rates are high right now, which makes people paralyzed and they do nothing. So there's dentists saying, like, I'm not going to buy a practice right now because interest rates are too high. But guess what? We make an arrangement with the bank and we say, hey, bank, I'd like to take a 30-year mortgage or a 10-year mortgage. And the bank says, okay, we will uphold that. And we won't go shopping for someone better than that's going to give the money to, meaning, but we can go refinance our loan when things become favorable. They cannot do that, right? So it's an advantage for us. I mean, the bank
by the
has
way, two more advantages too, Peter, just to add on those. Number one, that's tax deductible, your interest rate. So if you are borrowing at 6% and you're in a 40% tax bracket, you're only paying 60% of that 5% and 6% interest rate. And number two is if you have a loan that's locked and it's a month closing, you can actually ask your bank and they're legally obligated to give you the lower rate. So you lock the high end, but they don't lock the low end. You can actually make your bank. I've done that before, like 1 week before closing.
There's a legal obligation, but
there is a legal obligation. Are you aware of that, or am I just talking shit?
I think you're talking shit.
Okay,
but,
that's fine.
I would agree.
That's fine. We'll edit that whole part out.
Yeah,
make you look smart.
So, but I will tell you
exactly.
I will tell you.
You know, you're gonna do that, Peter. Peter's gonna make a clip of that
and
play it everywhere.
I'm like, no, Craig, you're wrong. You're just
the intro.
Anyways,
Anyways,
it's nice to have a phone with the screensaver like that. This is basically I'm
big
rich
flex.
and poor. Life sucks. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I have my family on.
My
there.
wife has a picture of me.
I'm sure she does. No, it's funny. Your wife has a picture of me too.
Anyway, Peter, you know, if you look at the historical interest rate rise and fall, everybody talks about 1982 and that 18% interest rate. I mean, you can't talk to anybody, any boomer with them not mentioning it. That what they don't tell you is that they refinanced it for half of that a year later. Yep. Right. So if you want to buy a business, let's say if you're going to borrow 600 grand and your rate was 6%, now it's 8%, right? That's $900 a month difference. So if you're going to buy a business, it's going to make 200 grand a year, 250, 400, whatever. The incremental cost of the additional borrowing, net of the tax savings from the expense of the interest, is really, I mean, we're not in crazy interest rate territory. Let's not forget that 5 years ago, if you bought a house, you were paying 5%, and everybody was cool with that.
Oh, we were happy.
But
6% was happy.
Yeah, but then it went down to 3%, and now everybody's pissed off that it's 7 or 8. It's really not the end
Peter
of the world.
and I have been saying that too. Like people are like, oh my God, the interest rates are so high. I'm like, they're 4. Yeah, they're not 2.5, but they're 4. 4 was still good. Remember, we had one of our masterminders from a prior years. Like, oh, I missed the boat. You know, I could have got a 2.5% refi. Now it's 4. I'm like, do it. There's still more pain coming. We'll be. Remember, that's crazy.
My point. I guess my point is
5.5 or 6 is still good. That's where we're at right now, right?
So the dentist, Peter, that needs to buy a building or a practice.
No, I guess here's where I'm going, Randy. And you may not know this about dentistry, but a well-run practice should have an investment yield of 25%. Okay. Right. So even if your cost of capital is 7%, you're still, the delta is still 100. An incredible investment, right?
By 100.
And you only stand to be able to refinance, like you said, into more favorable terms. And like Craig said, even that interest is a tax advantage situation, right? It's abated from your AG, from your earnings. So it's a funny thing. I'm hearing it more and more. Everyone's like, I'm going to sit tight right now while interest rates are high. And I'm thinking, okay, I get that. But like,
that's what freezes
mathematically, I do not get it.
Yep, that's what freezes economies, Peter. And just so you know, if you want to make the 8% or 7% mortgage, whatever it is now, 7.5%, you want to make it feel good. What if I told you if you bought a house today or a building and you paid 7.5% interest, what if I told you in 6 months it was going to be 12% interest? You would love that you did
Yeah,
that.
you'd feel like a hero.
You would love that you did that deal.
Mhm.
And so the rates are going up, and then they're going to come back down, because don't forget, the Fed has now had 2 months in a row where it can't meet its obligations
Right.
because of the interest rate, because they pay the same interest on the debt, on their debt, that we pay, right? So the problem,
Meaning
though,
the
Peter,
bonds, the treasury.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, and so, Peter, the thing you mentioned about printing more money, that's going to keep inflation here longer. So I don't think the rates are going back down to 3%. In fact, they should have never been there. And that's a whipsaw reaction to fix broken economies, right? Is to lower the interest rate to 0. And in Japan, it's less than 0. They actually pay you to take the money there. A healthy interest rate probably for the Fed is somewhere in the 2.5% to 4% range. And today it's 4.75, and we're all freaking out.
Yeah.
And the other thing, for your listeners, is don't look at anything with your face on the paper. Like, everybody who has a business also has a personal life, and that's, so you've got you've got Spodak Dentistry, and then you've got Craig Spodak, and you've got a house and a mortgage and cars and investments and a net worth, and you got your business. When you're looking at decision making about building a practice, buying a building, whatever, you have to look at everything from the macro view. And in the macro view, if you have to borrow money 2 points higher right now, it's no big deal. You can manage around that. The interest rate shouldn't be stopping our economy. It's relatively low, but if you read the papers and talk to your friends, they're going to go, yeah, I don't think we should be buying anything right now. This interest rate thing is a real tough racket. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everybody's freaking out about it.
Randy, I want to flip that on its head a little bit. We did a podcast maybe 3 or 4 ago where it was a big dialogue about to sell or not to sell a practice. And there is an amazing amount of pressure on dentists to sell their practice right now. Pressure from the outside, meaning a private equity standpoint. And and we kind of disclosed on there that Craig and I have gone through the process only to arrive at the same conclusion that, like you said, and I'm going to stick to this line, the money was there all along, right? But you get romantic about this. Wow, there it is all at once. So I guess my point is, Craig, I think this, even after this SVB and the banking crisis and now the uncertainty of the dollar, I think it's even more imperative that we would probably put, if we did that podcast now, Craig, is what I was saying.
Oh shit, I know. What a
you would actually say,
makes.
You would actually say, now is the absolute worst time to sell, because equities, that goes back to my question. Would you rather have equities or cash? Equity meaning a business, the ability to make.
Yeah.
Unless your business is very capital intensive, like real estate or what have you, you just told me that you're making 25% on your equity annually.
Right.
Okay?
Where are you going to get that?
Yeah. So I just want to explain to everybody, you will never make that money as an investor, because once again, you're going to take that one practice where you're concentrated your effort, you're working it yourself, and you're making 25%. And now you have to protect it for the rest of your life. You won't be making any 25% bets, because to make that kind of money in the real world, you're taking real risk of loss. And I know many people who've liquefied their businesses, not dentists, but have sold their businesses, taken the money, made bad investments, and been wiped out.
Yep.
So many people. So I'm a big fan. The other thing, let's go back to tax, because that's one of my, like, I'm a semi subject matter expert on tax.
Yep.
And not a tax professional, but I understand tax and how it works in business and your personal life, and the tax incentives that are available to you through real estate investing, et cetera. Anyway, when you own a business, you earn income, you pay expenses, and then you pay tax. When you are an investor or a W-2 employee, you earn, you pay tax, and then you have your expenses.
Right.
You want to be on this side of the equation. When you sell your business, you no longer have the ability for a lot of write-offs. Again, you have to look at everything in the macro. What are my tax advantages that I'm using through the business that I would lose if I sold the business? So when you're doing that spreadsheet, of, you should assume returns in the 6 to 7% range, not 10 to 15. And you should assume that you're losing some amount in tax advantages that you're currently enjoying that you won't enjoy.
Write-offs, yeah.
Right. So for you guys, especially if you love what you're doing and you're enjoying it, I would highly recommend that you keep your business, build it, grow it. And then when you've built up a net worth outside of the business and in the business, there comes a time when it's the right time. I had offers to sell my business when I was 35, when I was 40, when I was 45. I promise you I would have lost all that money in development in the great financial crisis if I had sold it. I held it until I was 55. And for me, that was the right time.
I remember I was contemplating a sale
That
of
was
my
excellent.
business as this building was going up. So this building was going up. I was, it's a lot of fear, and the narrative is very strong. There's a lot of people like, you should take some chips off the table. That's the typical way of saying it. You're very concentrated in this one thing. What if this? What if that? Take some chips off the table. We won't change anything. Rah, rah, rah. And it's just such a pervasive dialogue in dentistry right now. It is incredible the amount of stories, and then the confirmational bias of oh, as soon as I sold it, it went really well. And when we distill it down, we're like, is it the strategic partner that came on? No, it really wasn't, to be honest with you. They're not doing a lot for me, but I'm more at ease now. And
Sure.
and then their leadership style changes because they did take the chips off the table. And then the business can get unstuck because they don't have some panicked business owner roaming around.
Mm-hmm.
In some ways, there's a delicate balance between explaining what you want your team to do and then getting really far out of the way to let them do it. And the panic of the business owner sometimes is the very thing, the psychology that ruins everything.
After 35 years of owning and operating a fairly big company, I've been the president for 3.5 years since I've sold, and I'm running it better today.
Yeah. For what reasons?
Because I'm not being electric shocked every day by everything.
Right.
You know what I mean? Fear, uncertainty, doubt.
Right.
Lawsuits, problems, market fluctuations, whatever. But when I was younger, the idea of selling is super sexy. Right. It's the idea of having, a couple $1 million or more in your bank account is really a powerful motivator. Right.
And it's a sexy narrative in dentistry, just so you know, Randy, that we hear people get up on stage and they boast about, well, I got a 10, I got a 15x. Right. And it's like Craig said, it's a pervasive narrative that's going on where it's making a lot of dentists be like, maybe I should do that too. Me too. I should do that
There
too.
are a lot that are doing it that I don't think are doing it for the right reasons. Peter, did you listen to the Paul Atchison podcast I did?
I listened.
Well, let me
just
kind of snip to one part of it. Paul sold to that DSO that's part of a root canal system. The name goes on, one of the many that are part of a root canal.
Buckle.
Yeah, well, there's many, but yeah, one of those. And he said how much better his quality of life is. And I asked him a very directed question. I said, is it because of the strategic help you're getting? He says, not at all. I'm getting nothing. I mean, not nothing, but very little. He said, I'm like, then what is 90% of it? He said, 90% of it relates to how I feel as a leader. Mm-hmm. So if you could, and that's why the net worth analysis is so powerful, because if you could realize holy shit, Peter and I would trade net worth analysis all the time. And we kind of came up together the last 7 years and really changed the trajectory of our net worth because of assets and things like that. Mm-hmm. Practices did better, but we also made good investments along the way. And we're seeing things that are coming our way because of those investments. And it was like, holy shit. And Peter and I talked to each other. If this was half, I'd feel good. If this was half what our net worth is, we'd feel good about it. And what's your placeholder for this? I'm like, I don't know. I put this. Well, shit, then I'll do that too. And we start realizing this is your real net worth. And when you have that confidence of saying, I could afford a pretty big screw up, I can afford a downturn, I can afford a 3-month shutdown, you start to navigate your business differently. And Tony, I'm a big Tony fan. He always says the two things that affect the business, it always relates to two things. It always relates to the psychology and skill set of the owner. And he said, of those two things, 90% is psychology. If you're running around like I have in the past, I've been such a douchebag as a leader, worried about every little mistake. That mistake could be the beginning of this, and it causes.
I second that.
Yeah,
you did.
Yeah, I mean, you're just saying that for comedic value. I know that because you love my practice, but it doesn't help that I was really on people, and I'm not happy of the type of leader I was at that point. But it's a normal.
I agree, Craig. It is a normal process in the life cycle that every owner goes through that frenetic.
Well, you have to, that initial to break the momentum and get a business going, you have to be like a type A douchebag at some level. And then what
Well, you don't have
starts
to be a douchebag.
Well,
The
okay.
point is, the point is, you have to be
a
on
different
every detail every day.
Let me
and
take the credit
failure's
card.
not an option.
Right. Failure's not an option. But what you don't do is you don't shift gears as the business becomes successful, and you double down on what you used to do. And it's like that book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. You need to pivot. You need to grow as a leader. It's like when Donald Trump was campaigning, he was this reckless guy that would say crazy shit. It was so comedic and so great. You're like, oh, maybe I'll give this guy a shot. Figuring that when he became president, he transitioned
He'd become presidential.
Right. He'll become president. No, he's the same guy the whole time. And he's still like every success. Like, yeah, I did that. So it's like, we need to shift gears in our development of our life. And I think it's really important that you're talking about this. And I want to let you talk, but because you're just not aware of how pervasive the magazines and the speakers, and they're incentivized to sell your practice. So they actually get a VIG if they sell your practice. So you have a podcast like, hey, if you want to sell, contact me and I'll let you know. And they get a VIG on it.
So let me tell you something cool about your guys' business. And I think you know this. You have a very addressable market. Every human being needs a dentist.
Yeah.
Right. And then they roll into your doors for service and support and maintenance, whatever it is that you guys do for them. And you guys make a profit. And that is what private equity likes. And private equity is the largest growth asset in the United States. 50% of family offices now have their money in private equity. Frankly, there's not enough public companies to buy anymore.
Yeah, there's less now than ever.
Yeah, half. There's 3,500 public companies on New York Stock Exchange. That number was 7,000 10 years ago, or maybe it's 12 years ago. And so private equity is where it's at. That's where people are investing their money, and they're just chasing yield. They're buying car washes, they're buying dentists, they're buying flooring contractors. So yes, they're chasing you. Yes, they're going to offer you really cool stuff. On all the deals that I've seen that you have gotten, the deal starts like where it looks like this, but then with all the fine print, they were kind of buying you with your own money and all that kind of stuff.
1,000 cuts,
so,
right?
So you really need
and the clawback.
You really needed an advisor on your side, maybe not in the industry, to evaluate the deal. But at the end of all of that, you're going to end up with X amount of money in your bank account. And that's the money that you have to figure out, is it enough? And in most cases, it's not. Most deals that go down like a snowball actually fall apart and don't close. Most deals do not close because people finally realize that it's not enough, right? That's why I'm a big fan of building your net worth as you're owning and operating your business and taking the tax advantages of doing that. And then when the time is right, you're simply exiting and getting the rest of the money out, but you've already built a net worth.
So you're like building a money machine with the business until such a point that the money machine actually makes your life simple. And then the selling of the business is just gravy.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that.
Yes. Yeah. I wouldn't sell the business to get rich. You already have that money.
Right.
You already have it.
And I guess the decision you have to make is, can you get 25% and greater risk-free? And if you can, to hell yeah.
Yeah.
But
and if you and a lot of people will say, well, I have a friend who's making 10%, 12%, whatever. We all are. I have investments that make 25%. The problem is I'm not smart enough to put more than 1% of my net worth in that one, right? Yeah. So my average return is probably closer to 7 or 8%, right? Because you don't want to take that much risk. And no matter how good of investor you are, the best investors in the world make really bad bets and lose a lot of money a lot of the time. Hedge funds get wiped out with some of the smartest freaking PhDs running the company and doing the analytics, and they get wiped out for making bad bets.
Because they only need 5 unicorns for the 100 shitty bets that they made.
Right.
Peter, you said something earlier on that voice text to me that's really cool. And I've been thinking about it all day. So Randy, the problem is that there's many dentists that are only making 3% net profit out of their practices and 5%. And what does a dentist do when he has a business that's failing and not doing well? He goes and takes a course on how to prep teeth faster or a new technique, a clinical technique. Their default is like, I must not be a good enough dentist or technician. So let me go and learn the 5 steps to doing the root canal faster. And what Peter was saying, Peter, I wanted you to jump in. We're lecturing at the American Academy of Cosmetic Dentistry, which is really cool. And I'm really proud of that. But it's interesting that they have this breakout, and it's a breakout it's just 3 of us. It's Peter and I and 2 other guys. And it's a small segment of the American Academy of Cosmetic Dentistry. But Peter actually said, like, he thinks that this is what's going to add the most dollars to people, this segment alone. And Peter, can you distill what you said in that voice text back to Randy and I?
Yeah, to give some context, Randy, I was just giving Craig. I was driving along, and of course, that's when we have all of our best ideas. And I was like, this is the way I would envision the intro going to this this forum that we're a part of, right? So, Craig, it's basically a 3-hour course, and there's 3 people doing it. So each one of us have an hour, and it's all kind of focused on the experience, right?
Marketing.
Differentiating yourself, and so my argument was that many people come to, a very trade specific, the American Academy of Cosmetic Dentistry, are coming because I want to learn the latest bonding
How to become a better dentist.
or I want to learn the new prep here, or this new material, or coming. But I would say that in my voice memo to Craig, I was saying that arguably the lever that's going to make you more quote unquote bulletproof or make more money is going to be in the form that we've just kind of discussed,
which is like an ancillary breakout. And the same thing, I was invited to speak at this really prestigious organization called the Seattle Study Club. And I was actually thinking, like, I don't know if it's a good, fit for me. And I realized, through Peter and others saying that they're finally seeing that there needs to be an investment in the understanding of your business. So for those dentists out there that are hearing this 25%, I'm like, I'd be happy with 2.5%, or how to just not lose money. Your knee-jerk reaction to become a better dentist is not going to help you navigate out of this. If you don't, there's plenty of dentists that are wonderful technicians. They're amazing dentists. They're going out of business right now because they don't believe in this stuff, or they don't. What do you mean culture is important, or marketing? It's bullshit. People come to see me because I'm Dr. Jones, and Dr. Jones, I'm a doctor. Like, I've even had doctor friends of mine say, like, well,
are you a doctor? Or are you a business owner? How do you feel as a dentist?
Well, you have an obligation. If you own your practice, you are a business owner. Your patients are customers. When you recommend treatment, it's a sale. You have to get comfortable with that duality. If you're just a doctor that works in a practice and doesn't want to care about marketing, that's cool. There's a million, there's hundreds of thousands of opportunities.
Don't know that. Your patients don't know that.
Well, you have to decide what you want to be in. There's this really dirty idea, this dirty secret. Like, when I came to town, I was the first dentist to market, and all the dentists hated it. By marketing, I meant, like, I had a website. I took a larger ad out in the yellow pages. It wasn't like
you wanted to take their customers. That's your job.
Right. That's the job of a business owner, to add value.
Hey, just so you know, for all of your listeners, I hope there's a dental office you're competing with in your trade area that you're trying to destroy. Because
we're not. Yeah, that's a little harsh. There was one that was in my office this weekend learning, by the way, he's local, but he's a good guy.
So, no, we had friendly competition too, but let's face it, we're trying to build our business. The purpose of a corporation is to deliver profit to its shareholders.
Right.
Period. Full stop.
Even if you're just one shareholder.
Purpose of a corporation is to deliver profit to its shareholder.
Yeah, let that sink in.
Be a dentist, do your day job, be the best at it. I was a flooring contractor, and I would think I was one of the best at it. But then when I finally learned to work on my business and treat it like a business, I literally had 2 hats. I was the business owner hat, and I was the operator hat.
Right.
And it's a little bit hard to flip flop. And one of the ways to do that is to take time aside. In my presentation, I always talk about, are you spending 5 hours a month on personal finance? Most people aren't spending 5 hours a year. Maybe there's a metric of you should spend 5 hours a month on your KPIs and things to look at your numbers, because a lot of people just say the solution is for me just to work my butt off.
Yeah, work a little harder.
Yeah, just work hard and solve problems.
Right.
Randy, I don't have time for your number. I don't have time for your number gimmicks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Trickery. I know.
So
if you have no time, you can't be strategic.
The other thing is, I made a note. I was thinking about this podcast this morning, and I made a note because one time I was with you guys listening to some people talk about customers that had left the practice, like 18 months in a day, they're no longer your customer.
No, active patient. Yeah.
Right. So, and I'm like, okay, so if it was my business, and maybe this metric doesn't work, right? But if it was my business, the day that my patient, if I was a dentist, hit 18 months in a day, I would call their cell phone and say, this is Dr. Smith. I noticed you haven't been in a while. Did we do something wrong? Can we earn your business back? Are you getting good care? Right. 100%. And I would leave that voicemail. So if that's, how many calls could that be a month, Craig? Is that 10 calls a month? Is it 100 calls a month?
Yeah. It's
20, 30.
Yeah.
Okay. So
no, for a bigger practice, it's probably 100.
But for the average listener, it's 9.
Yeah.
9 calls.
So
7 calls.
So make those calls, because you know what? Half of them are going to come back. because you
Yeah.
actually called
And by
them.
the way, they're going to be at a restaurant with 6 other people and be, Dr. Randy Smith,
Yes.
the dentist, just called
So
me. He's
guess what,
worried they're
Randy?
not
So
gonna
Guess
my
why
like me."
silly
this
little-
never
my silly-
happens. Guess
my
why this
silly-
never
go ahead.
happens.
Go ahead.
That will never happen because as dentists, once we get that doctorate, we think that we are quote unquote, and I've been there. So I'm not saying I'm above that. I shouldn't have to do that. I'm not
I
going
get
to. I'm
it.
not going to do that. I'm a doctor. It looks like I'm groveling. It looks like I'm desperate, and I will never show my
Same with the
vulnerability. to
post-operative
patients.
call, by the way. The post-operative call. I don't want to call. Maybe they'll think something's wrong. Like, what's wrong with? So we always talk about the single greatest thing you can do in your practice is to call the day of the procedure. Hey, Randy, it's Dr.
I love
Liesel.
that call.
I want to make sure that
I
call
love
is
that call.
massive. And people are always like, should I spend an extra $5,000 on Google
But
ads, or
Craig,
should I do this? No one.
Randy nailed it. If you truly want to stop attrition in your practice,
100%. Yeah.
the easiest, lowest cost solution
Yeah.
is
Call
for
the
you to
people
pick
who
up the
have been in
phone
your
and
place.
call that patient. But I would bet you to say that
That's human
happens.
nature, bro.
That would happen. That does.
Yeah. The
If
easiest thing
someone
is to
does that, I
avoid-
want to hear about it. I want to hear about it because you would be the unicorn in dentistry of someone who's doing that.
Yeah.
If you're
comment
listening to
below
this
if you're
pod
doing
and you do
Someone
that,
should do that.
Peter,
But the
I
easiest
think
thing to do is not to go to Golden Corral either. The Lipitor is actually easier than going to Golden Corral, but people don't do what they're supposed to do.
So my silly little note that I wrote when I got out of the shower this morning is customers aren't a pool of revenue. They are individuals who make decisions, and a call from a doc to a cell phone would go a long way. It's
Yes.
what I would do.
Yeah.
In fact, you know what? If you would do some sort of revenue share with me,
magic is
I
what it
will
is,
call
honestly.
all your customers
I
that don't
appreciate
come
that.
back.
How
So
much
I'll
is it per customer?
let's figure something out
Here,
because I'll
do
love
my best.
I'll-
Do impersonation of me. Hi, it's Dr. Craig Spodak in the United States of America, calling to make sure that you're getting your cleanings.
So I think I said it right the first time.
You did.
Why haven't you been here? Are you getting good care?
Right. I'm just
Can I
concerned-
help
yeah.
you? Did we do something wrong? Maybe you don't say that. You'd have to workshop whatever it is.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
what
it's a
happens?
script though, right? Meaning it's
It
kind
is,
of
Peter,
you would
but
get
everybody
really good
customize
at it, and you would say
Everybody
the
would
same thing every time.
So if you weren't so obsessive with your dental care and you became 18 months in one day, you'd actually get a video from my practice at 12 months in one day saying, hey, we're concerned. We want to make sure you're getting care. If you're getting care, that's great. We want to make sure you don't neglect your dental health. And then a different thing at 18 months in one day with an offer to come back as credit for the
Who do
account.
you send that
I'm
through, Craig?
deleting,
I
I'm
send that-
deleting the video, but I'm not deleting the voicemail that you leave on my cell phone.
Okay.
I agree.
That's going to
Craig.
be I'm just telling you guys, what's
No,
a
I
patient
agree.
worth? Is
I
a patient worth $1,000 a year?
Peter has
least.
to answer that one. Yeah.
1,200 a year?
Yes.
Okay. So if you lose 12 patients a month and you could get 6 of them back, is that $6,000 a year for making a few phone calls?
Right.
Yes.
Come on, guys.
I know.
You're business owners.
I know that's the thing.
Well, it's not
sir.
even
And
the
what-
yearly thing, Randy. Like potentially, and we get into the lifetime value of a patient. But let's say that call was the change in trajectory from that patient to now stay in your ecosystem forever, so to speak, right?
Of course. And to
and-
tell
and
their
so it's
friends,
not
though,
just
Peter.
yearly.
Imagine the marketing of that. Imagine the marketing of my dentist just called me. What did he want? He just want to make sure I'm getting good care. And
It's
you know what?
just
The
funny.
new place
We
is not
was-
that great.
we revert to high tech. I'll have our software text you. I'll have our
Mhm.
thing. And Randy, as the consumer, is saying, yeah, I'm probably not going to look at that. I'll skip over that, but I will not skip over the fact that you just left me a voicemail.
But by the way, Peter and I have talked about this before.
Oh, by the way, get a
really
new cell
like
phone.
Doctors that give their cell phone number out to patients do better than doctors that don't. Some
For
doctors
sure.
are like, I can't give my cell phone number. I don't want them calling me. If you have any problems at all, contact me personally in a business. That is fantastic.
Craig, my website has had my cell phone number and it says, I'm Randy Smith. I'm the owner. Here's my cell phone number for
course.
25 years.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid of anybody calling.
Right.
I want them to call.
Right.
Now, also, I just want to tell your listeners that I also did not have a business where everybody was addressable market. I only have about 20 customers and they're irreplaceable because I have 80% market share in our trade area. So we literally cannot lose a customer. So of course I'm going to pick up the phone and call them.
Sure.
But just on what we're talking about here, if 9 calls a month could maybe yield you $5,000 a year, didn't you just make 60 grand after the first year of that?
Yeah.
So did you make 120 grand after the second year of that?
Well,
like-
never mind the goodwill, the marketing expense of that alone. I mean, why spend money on a pay-per-click ad? It's like, we're the best, service with a smile, when you can actually do that.
Keep a customer.
No, I know. I agree with you 100%.
We-
And
we
by
were-
the way, we go round and round. Peter and I do this a lot, where we go round and round about, are you a business owner or not? And I think that, unfortunately, if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably are a business owner. You're trying to be a business owner. You're trying to get better. But there's probably the reason why consolidation is happening so fast in our industry is there's most dentists don't believe they're business owners. They own the business, and they're just kind of winging it. and they're not going to a summit. They're not listening to this stuff. And like, that's why like Peter and I, we offer we offer a 10 times guarantee on the summit. So like if someone comes out, brings their team and buys all the tickets and they don't do better because of the 10 times better, they don't do a multiple of 10 times what they spent, we give them their money back, because there's so much bullshit in our industry. There's so many like consultants that have never been dentists, and they're like, here's the 5 steps to get to $1 million practice. And it's riddled with bullshit. Like, you don't have that. There's probably no flooring guys like, how to take your flooring business in 5 easy steps to 25 million.
No,
you don't have that, because we have an addressable market. So there's so many charlatans. And it's just really painful.
Yeah, I get it. So Peter, along the lines of customer retention, right? How many new customers do your listeners get a month?
Well, this is something that we talk about at Bulletproof a lot, Randy. It's something that we call it. And I'm going to get to your question, your answer here. Is really, instead of tracking the new patients that are coming through the front doors, we promote people to look at the net growth, right? The people who are the attrition that's happening by people becoming inactive,
18 months
minus the new patients, right? So that is the true net growth of your ecosystem.
And no one talks about that. They're like, I got 175 new patients a month, but 194 became 18 months and 1 day inactive. So your net growth is negative.
Yeah.
No one talks about that.
I think net growth could persuade you to think things are okay.
Of course, yes. But the only way to know your net growth is if you have some sort of plug into your software.
I understand.
You wouldn't know.
I understand. But when your person gives you the document that says how many new patients this month and how many left, just please make sure that your SEO and everything's working to keep new ones coming in the door, but go get the old ones to come back.
Yeah, you're saying what I'm hearing you say, Randy, is like the amount should not be tolerable, whatever it is, right? Meaning it's a simple solution. You don't get comfortable with, well, it's only a 10% attrition rate, or it's only a 3% attrition, whatever it is, right? Don't get complacent with that number, because it's an easy solution potentially for you.
Absolutely. And I think the phone call, or however you do it, have your spouse call, but it's not as good.
Well, I think it needs to come from the person that has the relationship with them, right? So if you're in a multi-doc practice, meaning that if I didn't have exposure to that patient, even though I am the principal of the practice, people would be like, who is this? Right?
Yeah. No, I agree.
So it needs to come, and it potentially it could even be disseminated to the hygienist, who really have a stronger relationship with a lot of the patients than the doctor does.
For sure. That's a great idea, Peter.
Unfortunately, though, it puts the burden. It's like, oh, great, one more thing for us to do, right? Like one more thing for us to be responsible for. Hey, can you make these post-op calls? Or
you can pay for reactivation.
Yeah.
I mean, why not incentivize them? It's like dialing for dollars. On a Saturday, you could just be.
Yeah. Incentivize them. I like it. So
I mean, how much is it worth to incentivize a hygienist for dialing for dollars? If they actually create a spreadsheet, this person was 18 months and 1 day, we got them to come back and blah, blah, blah. I mean, great to pay them. What a great little hack. I like that.
I thought you were going to pay me.
No, pay that. Oh, you're going to do it.
I'm going to make the calls.
Oh, that's awesome. Let me hear. Can you do your best, Brittany? Let me hear that one. And
she's good. Yeah. She's scary, man. I had a really good meeting with her last week. She said my perio gel is just.
I know he's on PerioProtect, by the way. So
I went from 5s to 3s, and I got the gas.
Plug in for PerioProtect, by the way. Their sponsor. Randy doesn't know this, but Randy's like, when you put your PerioProtect in, I'm like, oh, I don't use PerioProtect. He's like, dude, are you what the fuck? You don't use PerioProtect? This is a flooring guy telling me how remiss I am, and then I have to. And you know what I did? I go to Brittany, and Brittany gets me PerioProtect. But he'll call me. I know that Randy can only call one person when he has a PerioProtect trays in. It's me, because everyone else would think he sounds like he's mentally handicapped.
It sounds like I have marbles in my mouth.
Yeah, so I'm like, I know that's at least my 15 minutes per day where I can capitalize on only you and me. By the way, you ever see Seinfeld when Kramer got numb from the dentist and he went to the cab to flag a cab, and the lady's like, someone else flagged the cab. He's like, no, that's my cab. He's like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm like, oh, please go in the cab. And they think he's mentally retarded, and because of his Novocaine, and they treat him totally different. And then they like, do you live by yourself? He's like, yes, I do, because he had Novocaine all in his mouth. And then they invite him to a party to show him to sponsor him. He's normal. I think. Anyway, that's what that reminded me of.
Anyway, yeah,
I'm sorry.
Good one on the perio.
By the way, you're 4 minutes late for Dr. Liesel.
Oh, is that why?
Congrats.
Is that why he just
yeah,
came in
he
the
has an
door?
appointment at 3:00 here at the office.
Okay.
They are ready for Randy. That's why James just peeked in and gave us a dirty look.
No, he gave me a dirty look, and I
No,
didn't.
he gives me dirty looks too. So in full disclosure, Randy has a toothbrush in my bathroom. He's the only man.
We're not.
Wait,
we're-
wait, that's
Let's
creepy.
not go over this story again. You guys
Well,
did
that's
this in
creepy.
Mastermind, and
Oh, we
and
did?
it was.
Wow.
It was.
Randy walks in because he has to brush his teeth before getting a dental visit.
I'm not going to go see those girls without getting my teeth cleaned.
You have to do the cleaning
Anyway,
before the
Peter,
cleaning.
anything else? For
No,
me?
no. I'm excited to get to spend some time with you again in person. Come Summit in
Talk
Las
about what he's
Vegas.
doing at the summit, please.
Well, it's Craig, I hate to tell you, but it's really born from our amazing pod that Randy and I did together.
Yeah, but let the listeners know what value Randy's bringing in.
Well, it's a financial planning, right? And getting things,
good.
financial planning, getting your house in order, kind of looking at getting the macro of your own, financial independence, and Randy, is created kind of a, what do you call it? Randy's 20.
I call it Randy's Top 20. It's really a bad name, but it's really my 20 tips for people to get their financial life in order. It was started by mentoring my children who are in their 30s now. And it's a fun little thing. And, Peter, even a sophisticated guy like you, after we went through it, you said, hey, there's some great takeaways here for me. So we hope to demonstrate that at the summit and get people thinking about their finances and how to manage them correctly and all the different nuances.
I would say that exercise, like, kind of the personal financial statement, Randy, has been the single most empowering thing that I've done as a adult. Because when I worry or when I get scared or whatever, I will revert to that and look at that and be like, this is an unfounded fear, and I don't update it as much as you, but so many people operate by gut. They do not make very good data-driven decisions. I was one of those people. And I think it's the most important. We look at our KPIs in our business and we look at our retention rates and our attrition and patients going inactive, but most dentists don't have a PFS, don't know their financials, don't know their financial situation from a net worth. And I would say that's probably one of the master KPIs that we should be looking at.
Peter, you can run your business from your gut if you have a hot dog stand. Anything above that, you need financial metrics and financial statements and income statements.
I think you've said that to me before.
And timely. So anyway, okay. So
all right, well, you're late.
How do I exit the pod?
Well, I just wanted to end real quick.
Just like that, Randy.
No, one last thing too. One last thing I want to say, Randy. It's awesome, having your expertise in my life for all these years. And what I'm really excited for is that if everybody has this proximity to you, because when I met you, I couldn't take the days off that I can take now. And, having a friend like you has created the value for my own life and understanding my business. And it's such a great treat for all these listeners to have proximity to you through the summit and through these podcasts. And as a small gesture, if this is adding value to you, the listener, there is that wounded sailor, correct? I said that?
Warrior sailing.
Warrior sailing, sorry. I'm sorry, I butchered it. We'll edit that out, make it look perfect. It's warrior sailing. And I know that you do this selflessly and that you believe in this charity, and it's a good charity. And if you want to speak just in closing 1 second about that, just so people can make a donation.
So Warrior Sailing is an organization that my wife and I support. We're the finance chairs. It's a small organization. We treat 250 injured and ill veterans a year. And we do not take people boating. We do therapeutic care, and we do it through the sailing community. And it's warriorsailing.org.
Okay. Well, so if there's been any value that he's given now in the future, please consider warriorsailing.com.
You got it.
Thanks, Randy. Go get your teeth worked on.
All
Thanks,
right.
Peter.
I'm looking forward to it. Hey, Peter, it was creepy not being able to look at you. I'm kind of
I know.
Like,
well,
we have a weird setup here.
Yeah. So, okay. Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
See you guys.
Randy. See ya.